Guys, this week's confession is a good one. I have something I have to tell you. I haven't been telling you something, and I've got to tell you today. As you're listening to this right now, in this exact moment, I am on a flight to New York with a boy. Yay! So crazy. What's crazy about it, so I'm going with him and I'm going with his friends, and I'm meeting his friends for the first time. So we've been talking for like 2 months, and he asked if I wanted to go, and I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm trying to live my life however I feel like it and not worried about like what I should do and what the right thing is and all this stuff. So I said, fuck it, I'm going. So I'm basically going to New York with a group of strangers. But what's crazy is that 1 week shy of 1 year ago, is when my engagement ended. So, like, literally, the last time I was on an airplane, I was uncontrollably sobbing the entire time, like, shamelessly sobbing in front of all of these people, smashed into a sardine tube, and never, like, I didn't know what my life was going to look like. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't understand why it was happening. My life, as I had known it for the last 5 years, was completely changing. And I just think it's so bizarre because I remember constantly saying, I don't want to start over. I don't want to do this again. I don't want to start dating again. I don't want to be experiencing this. And what are the fucking chances that literally almost to the date, 1 year later, I am going to be on a plane with a new guy that is really great. Like, is just absolutely completely different than anybody else that I have ever been with. That is just a total pattern shift from everything that I've experienced. And, I'm not getting ahead of myself here or anything, but I just think it's really crazy, and it's just like a full circle moment, and I can't help but share it with you. I was discarded by my ex-fiance and the guy I had been with for almost 5 years at that point. He had a son. I was considered the stepmother to his son. I was really close with him. That was and still is one of the hardest things about that is never getting to say goodbye to him and missing him immensely. I literally cried in therapy about it the other day. Like nothing upsets me like losing him did. But I, knew that was what was best for his well-being. So I did what I could. I sent a little care package and no one ever reached out to me. I never spoke to anyone from his family or him ever again. It was like, one day we had an entire wedding planned and I was fully enmeshed in that life. And the next day I was gone and I never, heard from them again. And while my family disintegrating overnight because my dad basically did the same exact thing to my mom 5 years prior was probably my biggest trauma or is my biggest trauma, this was like a very close second because obviously it was, correlated to not, that was obviously my personal life too, but like this was one of the most damaging things that I've ever experienced. When my parents separated, I was upset, but it wasn't like that was more of like a subconscious impact where this was like a very devastating thing that happened. It took me, I would say, about 6 months to feel okay again. I, experienced really intense nightmares, reliving it in different scenarios over and over again. I was just devastated. I just couldn't understand how someone who I thought was my best friend could one day pretend to love me and the next just disappear and drop me like I was a piece of trash. But because of how much work I put into myself and in self-improvement before that happened, I was already kickstarted into healing a lot quicker than I would have been had I not been doing those things. And I was really proud of myself, and it still is the thing that I am most proud of, is that as soon as that happened, I got the fuck out of there and I never looked back. I never reached out to him. I never check his social media. I never, I don't do any of those things. I just started moving on like right the fuck away. And it was incredibly hard, but again, I'm like so proud of myself that I didn't do what maybe an old version, not maybe, an old version of me would have done, because I have been in relationships that I've done this, that I cry and I beg and cling and seek closure. And I really just didn't do any of those things, which I am so incredibly proud of myself for. And one of the most serendipitous things that happened was on the actual last day I ever saw him. That day was like basically it was really over, but he did leave on a note of like, maybe we could go to therapy and try to fix it. Let me know and I'll talk to you. I'll see you again soon. And he left the house and I never saw him ever again. On that day, my dad closed on a house and was moving out of his townhome, and I was able to then move into that townhome temporarily. So I had a landing pad to be in, and I think that was one of the most healing things for me, because environment is such a big factor in feeling safe. And had I had to stay in Tampa, because I could have stayed in Tampa if I wanted to, but I truly needed the support of my friends and family at that time, and I just couldn't have stayed in that space. I couldn't have gone to the same grocery stores or been in the same areas. Even now, being in areas that we were in at the beginning of our relationship kind of, makes me feel some type of way. So I just can't even imagine having stayed there and being in isolation, knowing nobody else there. So I was able to move back and have this very safe, different healing cocoon. I didn't have to go back to my mom's house and like feel like I was completely starting over living in my childhood bedroom. I was able to still maintain my independence and have my own space to live in. And I lived there for February, March, April, May, June, July, 5 months. And I then was able to transition into the studio apartment in downtown Chicago that I'm in now. And that transition into my studio here was like a really big launch into feeling way more healed than I had at any point that far. So like being able to not only move away from the environment that I was in with him, but then also move away again from the environment that I was healing from him in was really impactful. But while I was in my healing era, when I was in that townhome, I was really adamant about making sure that I wasn't just laying there all of the time. And I also was adamant of making sure that I allowed myself to just lay there. I didn't go to the gym. I went to the gym twice the entire time I was there, but maybe I did a couple of yoga exercises if I needed to move my body in order to feel better. But, I watched a lot of Vanderpump Rules. I watched, just a lot of movies. I started painting and did that there. I did things for the podcast. I read a lot. I spent time on the balcony. I started going to Pilates with friends. I started going to my mom's every single Sunday. And then I started to try to show up in the world. And I would go read at a bar, because in my old life, I would have, maybe spent a Saturday during the day going to a bar and sitting there. And so I was implementing that in my own life myself. I started taking classes. I took an archery class. I took horseback riding classes. I constructed solo days for myself. And even when I felt like absolute dog shit, I put an outfit on and I did my hair and I did my makeup and I took the train downtown and I made this whole nice day for myself to get out in the world and try to feel better. And it was really impactful for my healing. I listened to a fuck ton of podcasts. I listened to a lot of Mel Robbins. I listened to a lot of Liz Boss. I listened to a lot of people validating what it was that I experienced. I read a lot of books. I researched what it was that I experienced. I was really intentional about wanting to heal and doing everything in my power to make sure that I did that. No matter how much pain I was still experiencing and how much emotional overwhelm and emotional exhaustion I was experiencing, I ended up going to therapy, and I still do that every week. And while my healing was not linear by any fucking means. Like, it was always ups and downs, and constantly something that I was always saying was that, like, God, I thought I was doing better, and now I'm like, I feel like shit again. I feel horrible. I can't even get out of bed again. It was not linear by any means, but slowly over time, I started to feel not just better, but better than I literally ever have in my entire life. And as I started to heal and I started to make myself feel safe again, I was able to gain clarity into my mind about the patterns that I had been following for my entire life. I remember I was on a walk with my mom because I was having a complete meltdown spiral one day. And so she went on a walk with me. And I remember where I was. We were walking this path, and I had this realization that I had spent the last 26 years of my life completely self-abandoning in everything that I did. And I thought that I was so self-improved and so good. And I mean, Wellish had been a thing for a couple years at that point, and I just didn't realize the level of self-abandonment that I was engaging in up until this point. And I made it my mission to not do that anymore. And through doing that, I was able to take accountability for my role that I played in being with a person like him, and for the pattern that I had engaged in for so long, and had learned about my good enough wound and learned why I, did the things that I did in order to make sure that I never repeat that pattern ever again, that I can heal that wound and do right and better for myself going forward. I've intensely increased my self-trust. I've intensely increased my confidence. I've intensely increased my secure attachment. I've intensely increased my level of not giving a fuck and just living however I want to live, and just surrendering to the process and knowing that whatever is going to happen is what's going to happen, and that I fully trust in that process. I've completely increased my standards. I mean, I didn't even have standards before, and now I completely love myself enough to have standards for myself and have expectations of the people that I allow in my life. And if they fall short of those expectations, then it's a relationship that I have to be brave enough to reconsider and do something about. I've learned so much about what I will and will not tolerate, and how I would only hear my intuition. I wouldn't listen to it, and the ways that I would make excuses for it and logic my way out of my intuition. I've learned that in order to create a life that is truly in alignment with you, you have to be authentically yourself, and know that the things that are in alignment with you will come to you when you are authentic, but that also you will repel the things that are not meant for you. And so you have to be okay with people not liking you, and you have to be okay with sharing opinions that aren't going to be crowd favorites, and you have to be okay with not having everything that you thought that you were going to have, because at the end of the day, it's going to lead you to what you're truly meant for. And now, here I am, a year later, getting on a plane again, still nervous, still anxious, still mentally ill, still, screwing things up and not getting things right, and beating myself up, and having trouble trusting myself on certain things, and making sure I'm making the right choices. And I, by any means, am not this version of myself that has done this glow up and walks on water now and is never phased. I still have emotions. I still get triggered. I still get upset. None of those things have stopped. But what has changed is that I live fully for myself now. And I'm brave enough to take accountability for my role in my patterns and in my choices, and making sure that my choices are as in alignment with who I authentically am as possible. I have now been able to label my values and live in alignment with those values consciously. I'm not getting on a plane with someone because they've made me feel special and chosen. I'm getting on a plane because I fucking feel like it, because I'm talking to this guy and it seems like a fun opportunity. And I do the things that are fun and spontaneous, and not worry about the meaning of things, and not do things because of the reassurance and the validation that I get from them. I'm not getting on the plane because this guy liking me is going to finally make me feel okay and save my life. I'm getting on the plane because I create a life that I don't need to escape from anymore. So if you're the one right now that's in the midst of the emotional turmoil and sobbing their life away and don't know when they're going to feel better again and don't understand why this thing is happening to them, first of all, tune into Monday's episode because you're going to want to hear it. But also, you won't always be. And I know that's annoying to hear right now because that is all people would say is like that you'll get better and you'll be stronger for it and you're resilient and you're going to work through it and you're going to see. And it's true. Like those things are all true. And in hindsight, God, this is the best fucking thing that has ever happened to me. I have never believed in God, and this is the closest I've ever come to believing in God because for the love of fuck, I would have married the guy. And I cannot tell you enough how divinely protected I feel that this played out the way that it did because that I can't even believe that I was even dating that person, let alone engaged to them. And just so many realizations in hindsight that I just did not see because of rose-colored glasses. And it's just truly the best fucking thing that has ever happened to me. But if you're in that position right now, you're not going to feel that way. And God, it's so fucking annoying saying the things that I heard people say to me because I just didn't want them. They're just not helpful and it doesn't make you feel good that like you just have to go through it and that's when and you'll come out on the other side better. But fucking Christ, it really is the way that it works. But one day you're going to look back and see you living life, operating life in a way that the old version of you before this fucked up thing happened ever would have. And you're not even going to realize that you became the person that can handle it until you look back and you're like, oh shit, who the fuck am I? Who is this badass? On a day-to-day basis, healing doesn't look like the social media glow-ups that we see. It looks like living for yourself no matter what and having the realization that you are capable of doing that. It looks like getting to know who you are and your values and raising your standards and healing yourself and making you feel safe and being resilient by bringing yourself back to neutral and then from that neutral space learning from what you experienced and allowing yourself to level the fuck up in any way that you can. And it's just going to be such a natural, incredible progression that the version of you that got blown down by this fucked up experience is going to be so different than the version of you that walks away from it. Okay, wish me luck. I don't know what this experience is going to be like. I'm trying to go into it with like zero expectations. Obviously, that's kind of hard, but like I am nervous about meeting friends. I'm nervous about, just like this will be the first time I'm spending this much consecutive time with him. Who knows how people act when they travel. I don't know. I'm a little nervous, okay? But it's okay because we're just living our life and soaking up all the experiences that we have the opportunity to experience. And it's going to be a good time. So I will report back very soon. Wish me all of the luck. I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. It's a miracle. It's Friday. We fucking made it. We're going to have the best weekend ever. And I love you guys immensely. I will talk to you so soon. Bye.